and Health Channel. Today, we will discuss the validity and applicability of findings from various studies. From large-scale research to the integrative power of meta-studies, join us as we explore the reasons why scientific conclusions are sometimes met with skepticism. Regarding people's diet, they pose incredible questions today. For example, is it better to have an apple or a banana, and is it better at 3 p.m. or at 5 p.m.? Whoever answers these questions knows less than the one who asked them. Accompanying this is the obligatory introduction. Research has shown, a very abused introduction that instantly gains the listener's trust. Because there are various types of research, just like we have high and low quality sneakers, or high and low quality sweaters, we have research and low quality research. Research sometimes have a very uncreative design and unbelievable conclusions. For example, one study showed that the connection between emotional overeating, obesity, and metabolic syndrome is greater than with other types of overeating. All of this would not be so nonsensical if, for example, the level of stress hormones in the respondents had been analyzed, but the research was based on a questionnaire. In short, if people only knew how research is conducted, they would then understand why numerous questions remain unanswered. Furthermore, this review of research serves to help us understand why we change our views on nutrition every 10 years. In the field of medicine, and also nutrition science, there are two basic types of research, depending on whether the researcher is just an observer or actively participates during the research. The first type of research assumes that the researcher observes or follows events, and this research has very little value, and I will tell you later why. Observation or monitoring also includes two types of research. The simplest research is case control studies, which have little evidential power and are used as the first, cheap, and orientational research. Compared to other studies, case control studies are retrospective, they look at the subject's behavior in the past. They are conducted by comparing the past behavior of two groups of subjects, one suffering from a certain disease or condition, and the other being healthy. Ideally, the group of healthy individuals should not differ in terms of gender, age, and socioeconomic structure from the group of ill individuals. For example, we examine the link between long-term use of oral contraceptives and cervical cancer and compare a group of healthy women with a group of women diagnosed with this malignant disease. The results showed, as expected, that among the ill women there was a significantly higher percentage of regular users of contraceptive preparations. Moreover, the ideal study is one in which both groups of women have a similar representation of smokers and a similar age and socioeconomic structure. In other words, it would be pointless to compare a group of women suffering from cervical cancer who on average are 60 years old with a group of young women who are all healthy just because they are still young. Even if perfectly designed, the flaw of these studies is the statements and memories of the respondents, which can be untruthful, incomplete, or distorted. Specifically, in the given example, one should take with a grain of salt the women's claims about the regularity and use of contraceptive preparations. Some of them will intentionally give a false statement, and some will simply not remember relevant events. Slightly more complex research, where the researcher is still just an observer of events, are cohort studies. These are quasi-experimental studies during which a group of respondents who are exposed to increased risk or eat in a certain way is observed and followed. But at the time of starting the study, members of the group do not have a disease or disorder. For example, a group of several thousand respondents, some of whom have had hepatitis B, is followed for years to determine the connection between this viral disease and liver cancer. The advantage of cohort studies is that there is continuous monitoring of the respondents, which eliminates distorted reports on lifestyle. In other words, cohort studies do not rely on the memories of the respondents, but on daily notes and medical records. So, those were the studies where we just observe groups of people, their past, or follow them over time. The drawback of all these studies is that they cannot show and prove causality, but only a correlation because there is always a possibility that the condition or disease occurred due to some other reason that was not apparent or was not followed during the research. For example, we observe a population of vegetarians in India and track their health for 20 years. It turns out half of them work in a mine, where there are high concentrations of radon, which we didn't consider at all, and since many of them develop lung cancer, we conclude vegetarianism causes lung cancer. This is, of course, just a caricature, but believe it or not, there are studies today that damage modern knowledge and understanding of phenomena more than they contribute. Now come the studies where the researcher actively participates, and these are experiments. Experimental research is prospective, they follow the behavior of the subject for a certain period, studies that are controlled for the placebo effect. This research is expensive, but they have the highest evidential power, and their outcome is a conclusion about the cause and effect relationship. In the experiment, we have two groups. The group on which the experiment is performed. A control group over which there is no intervention but is subjected to placebo treatment. A placebo is an inert substance that causes an effect in a certain number of people, 6 to 8%, which is assumed to be psychosomatic, i.e., caused by the knowledge that a treatment is being applied. Controlling for the placebo effect is an important part of experimental research because it serves to determine whether the improvement occurred due to the application of a drug or a specific diet, or because the person is aware that they are being treated. In the case of nutrition, active control is used instead of placebo because we cannot deceive the respondents regarding the diet since food, unlike pills, is identified with the senses. And then, for example, we follow two groups for 10 years, one on a mixed diet, the other on a vegan diet. Experimental research is not only blind from the angle of the respondents, but in the best conducted experiments, the investigators also do not know who is receiving what treatment. Why is this important? Well, because the investigators want to discover a certain connection, so they can easily imagine it where it doesn't exist. But there is another complicating factor: sample size. So, besides the type of research, the sample size is a very important factor that needs to be taken into account when considering the significance of a particular study. Thus, expensive studies whose conclusions have significance are conducted on a sample of thousands or tens of thousands of participants. On the other hand, conclusions based on a small number of participants have no value and can potentially indicate the direction in which future research should move. For medical research conducted on a small sample to be at all usable, scientists use so-called meta-studies or review research that combines the findings of a large number of smaller studies on the same topic from all over the world. For example, after 10 years of conducting studies on a small sample, 50 to 100 participants, in different parts of the world examining the effects of coffee on health, if the research methods were the same in all studies, a meta-study or review research is done that combines their findings and their results, and then reaches a conclusion that can be taken as the truth. Thank you for your attention. If you liked this video, please click the button to like, share, and subscribe.